Welcome to the Injury Lawyer Podcast, a podcast that discusses all types of injuries caused by all types of negligence. Join attorney Steve Heisler, the injury lawyer, and other experts as they provide valuable insight into your legal rights and help keep you informed. Now your host, Steve Heisler.
Hey, welcome to the Injury Lawyer Podcast. I'm Steve Heisler. I am the creator and founder of the law offices of Stephen H. Heisler, the injury lawyer, and you are listening to the Injury Lawyer Podcast, as I just stated. I am the senior attorney for the law offices of Stephen H. Heisler. I've been doing this for 35 years, and I just started the National Amputation Attorneys. So I am so glad to have you here today. Excuse me, I'm nursing a little bit of a bug in my throat. And if you notice, I don't know, Russ, if you notice, I'm wearing a suit and a tie today.
I do see the suit and tie, the shirt and tie looks nice. I'm assuming that you were somewhere where you had to be dressed appropriately, unlike me.
I have nightmares of going into court, like wearing like my jeans and like the judge like reaming me out. But actually, so, you know, whenever I go into court, I'd like to go in like in a pair of jeans and kind of like a t-shirt, but that kind of takes away the impact of it, you know, of kind of like, you know, what I'm putting out when the attorney comes in, looks like he's going to a Grateful Dead concert. So yes. So I came in, you know, it was just a workers' compensation hearing, but you know, everybody else is dressed in suits and ties. And so, yeah, you know, I was all about it. I was all about it.
Looking sharp.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. So actually today, what we are talking about, I also forgot to that this podcast is to discuss all types of injuries that stem from all types of negligence. And I also want to just quickly wish all of you a happy summer. By the time you're hearing this, it's probably summer. So, you know, I'm just hoping everybody is safe, puts on some sunblock, but enjoys themselves and has a fantastic next couple months. So the topic for today's episode is failure to diagnose blood clots. Do I have a case for medical malpractice? And I'm going to ask you, Russ, what do you think Serena Williams, tennis star Serena Williams, Regis Philbin, and I'm sure a lot of people that are listening today are aware of, or remember, what was it, Kathy Lee and Regis? And Regis is now in the big talk show in the sky because, you know, he's up there with Johnny Carson and all the other talk show people. And also Jimmy Stewart. So what do you think the three of them have in common? So the actor, Jimmy Stewart, who was, of course, in, what is it, A Wonderful Night or
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. And Regis Philbin and tennis star Serena Williams. What do you think they all have in common?
I know what they all have in common. They all made a boatload more money than I.
Than both of us. Yeah.
Tell me, what do they have in common?
They all have had DVTs. And so a DVT, deep vein thrombosis, is a blood clot. Okay. And it's a blood clot that lodges in your leg. It predominantly lodges in your leg, but it can occur in your pelvis, in your thigh, in your arm. And so all three of them have dealt with deep vein thrombosis. And of course, I'm sure a lot of people have heard deep vein thrombosis, but they weren't really sure what it was. So as I said, it's a blood clot. And it can have devastating effects on you.
Now, if I can ask you a question, and I don't recall what took the life of Regis and Jimmy Stewart, but was it that was fatal that caused their death?
No.
Okay.
No. So they all were very lucky in that They didn't have to have a limb amputated. They didn't die. So, they actually had it and it was treated successfully, but it raised awareness for deep vein thrombosis. And you should know that 900,000 people in the U.S., I think it's every year suffer from some bout with deep vein thrombosis. So, it's definitely something that is, that happens a lot. It's known to happen after surgery. It's also known to occur as a result of, inactivity. And so you've heard about, whenever you're flying, you should probably, if you're flying cross coast, you should probably
move
get
around
up
the
and walk
cabin.
around. Yeah. So that's really important because, especially, with someone like your age, Russ, the older, you getting your AARP card yet?
Not what is that? Is that 55?
That's 50 now.
Oh,
AARP.
Then yes, I must be getting it. Turning
it
up and throwing it away, maybe.
Yeah, I was being a little bit of a little snarky. You don't look 50. I'll be 62 in September.
See,
I got my AAR,
and I look older than you.
I don't think you do. I don't think you do, brother. Yeah. Well, I got gray on the sides here. So.
Yeah, I got nothing on the sides.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess if I had to choose, I don't know. Well, that's a discussion, I guess, for another day. But for right now, I can tell you that, that if you are a senior or you're somebody that has just had surgery or somebody, that was maybe you're on bed rest for a period of time and you're up there in the years, maybe north of 50, then you probably, you want to stay active. You want to stay on your feet. You don't want to have extended bouts of sitting or laying in bed. I mean, if you can prevent that, that's great. But if not, it is what it is, but you want to try to move around. Now, the thing about DVTs, and again, DVTs are a form of blood clots, are that DVTs break off and migrate. When you've got that blood clot and you have deep vein thrombosis, they can also break off and migrate to your lungs or to your upper body. And if they do migrate to your lungs, then you have a very distinct chance of getting what's called a pulmonary embolism. And a pulmonary embolism is a blockage in the arteries of the lungs. And, I remember there was a gentleman that played for the Baltimore Orioles. His name was Paul Belair. He was a center fielder. And I was growing up in Baltimore back in the 60s and 70s. And he was one of my favorite Orioles. His son actually went to a Baltimore high school. My dad was actually his gym teacher. And to make a long story short, he was in the hospital and this was unusual as a young kid. He was like in his mid-20s. And I think he had surgery and he had a pulmonary embolism and died right there in the hospital.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, so DVTs. Go ahead, buddy.
If I can interrupt, I was curious about Jimmy Stewart, and the medical technology wasn't the same as it is now, except
correct.
With thrombosis, it says on June 25th. I don't remember. I think it was 1997. He was hospitalized for an irregular heartbeat. On June 25th, a thrombosis formed in his right leg. By the way, this is according to Wikipedia, and it led to a pulmonary embolism. A week later, Stewart died of a heart attack caused by the embolism. He was 89 years old.
All right, so then correct what I said earlier. I did not know that Jimmy Stewart died. I know that he had a bout with it.
He died of a heart attack. But it was
right.
They're saying that the embolism was a relationship to that.
Yeah. So I mean it's a serious thing. And one thing I also didn't know about pulmonary embolisms is actually the number one cause of let me look here. So pulmonary embolisms are the leading cause of death in women during pregnancy or just after having a baby. Did you know? And who would have thought of that?
That I did not know.
Yeah, I had no clue. So yeah, it's serious. Over 100,000 people a year die in the United States from a blood clot, whether it's a DVT or whether it's a pulmonary embolism. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about, what happens if you, God forbid, have the symptoms and signs of a blood clot, of a DVT or a pulmonary embolism, and you present yourself to a medical professional, either whether it be a hospital or to your doctor or to an urgent care. Remember, the whole purpose of this podcast is to talk about, do I have a case? And we've talked about other types of injuries that occur, and what would take it from just being a happening or an incident to something that is actionable or something that you can actually file a claim for or file a lawsuit if you have to. So we're going to talk about the standard of care and what these medical professionals should be doing if somebody comes in with a blood clot or signs or symptoms of a blood clot or a DVT, and what they should be doing. I'm going to give you a very sad story of somebody who actually went into a hospital and they were not able to timely diagnose the blood clot when they should have, which causes death. So we're going to talk about that. And, so let's get into it. And of course, Russ, you being my lieutenant, and I think you should start wearing kind of like the lieutenant. I don't want you wearing like a full blown wardrobe of a lieutenant, but, or you're like the guy, that's kind of, like the navigator, like, when you go on a road trip, you're kind of like the navigator. I'm the pilot. You're the co-pilot.
Okay. So it's kind of like you're the host. I'm the co-engineer, producer.
I'm Johnny Carson. You're Ed McMahon.
Okay.
Without the hi-os.
Except I have the hairline of David Letterman's guy. What's his name?
Oh, Paul Schaefer.
Paul Schaefer.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to expect you to bring an organ to the next. All right. So, all right. So, but anyway, so let's talk about the 5 warning signs of blood clots. And these are not necessarily, this is not a medical show. This is a legal show. But these are symptoms that, if you're presenting to the emergency room with these symptoms, the ER doctor or your primary care doctor or your urgent care doctor needs to pick up on these and automatically take action by doing the other things that we're going to talk about when they suspect a blood clot, DVT, PE. So one is swelling in the leg or arm. One is tenderness or cramps in the leg, shortness of breath, passing out or feeling lightheaded, chest or back pain when breathing, and leg discoloration, red or blue. Now, I can tell you, if my leg is turning red or blue, I'm going to get my butt to an urgent care center or an emergency room or to my primary care doctor, because that right away will tell me that something's not right. And actually, and then if you kind of combine that with swelling or chest or back pain, when I say swelling in the area, the leg or, a certain area, and you need to get into an emergency room or get to a medical professional. So when you get to that medical professional, and you come in with those symptoms, they should take certain course of action to discover what the heck is going on. All right.
Now,
So
one thing I want to bring up is
yeah,
when you get to the point, because you mentioned earlier in the show, which I think can relate to a lot of your viewers and listeners, is traveling in a plane. So once we get to that point where you're discussing how to reduce the risk, I actually found on the CDC website a really good little bullet point of what you can do, especially if you're flying on a plane. So
well,
I'll
you're
take it.
talking about if someone's on a plane, what they can do to minimize their chances of getting a blood clot.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
Which is probably walking around, keeping their legs elevated.
right. Well, you know what? I'll use that as a tease. I'll let you continue on, and I'll put that in my back pocket for now.
Well, no, because I actually not going to cover that. So I think you should go. No, seriously, I want you to go
Okay.
ahead and give those. So, but I was just thinking. I was because I'm a participant in this podcast. So I was kind of thinking. All right. So one would be So get up maybe and walk up and down.
Right.
Of
Sometimes you
course.
can't do that. By the way,
Right.
I'm the participant. You are the pilot of the podcast. Remember? All right.
All right.
So
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
a lot of your listeners and viewers, they do fly, they do travel a lot, and what they're saying
Or even
is,
if they drive, right? I mean,
well,
to get
yeah.
out and just.
Yeah, you're in a little bit more control when you're driving, but they're saying move your legs frequently when on long trips, exercise your calf muscles to improve the flow of blood. If you've been sitting for a long time, which a lot of people do on flights, take a break to stretch your legs. Extend your legs straight out, flex your ankles, pulling your toes toward you. Some airlines actually suggest pulling each knee up toward the chest and holding it there with your hands for about 15 seconds, or holding with your hands on your lower leg, and then repeat that up to 10 times. It's like flight exercises, and these types of activities can help improve the blood flow
Well,
in your legs.
yeah. I mean, you're gonna probably look funny at somebody that that's
Who
not
cares?
usually something you see, right? But to avoid something, and I just think if you've had a recent surgery or bed rest, or if you've been having some tightness or whatever in your leg when you're flying, you want to do it because obviously, it's pretty serious. So here's what. So you bring yourself into the emergency room. You bring yourself into an urgent care facility. You bring yourself into your primary care doctor, and you tell them that you have these symptoms that we just talked about: swelling in the leg, discoloration. This is what the medical professionals should do. So the first thing they should do is they should do a physical exam. And when they're doing the physical exam, they should be asking you questions such as, have you had any other health problems recently? Have you had like a broken bone? Have you had a heart attack? Have you had a stroke? Have you had a recent surgery? Have you had a recent inactive period of time where, like we said, that you had bed rest, or a long bus ride, long train ride, whatever? Are you on birth control or hormone replacement? Because again, women are not immune from having this happen to them. And also whether or not you've been pregnant recently, and have you recently had a baby, or are you pregnant, or have you been pregnant? And I guess some pregnant women who come down with preeclampsia or some kind of condition before birth are put on bed rest, and that's that can be that could very easily cause a DVT. So that's one thing. So doctors, what their duty to you when you're in the emergency room and when you're at the medical professional is, one, they need to take a physical exam and they need to ask you a lot of questions. That's what they're doing to not breach their duty of care to you. Here's some of the bigger things. So if they suspect a deep vein thrombosis, they need to order a duplex ultrasonography imaging, which is kind of like a Doppler, I think. Again, I'm not an expert in radiology or imaging. I always thought that they just do Dopplers to kind of look at the veins, or kind of look and see how healthy the the venous your venous whatever, the venous part of your body, your veins, and so the duplex ultrasonography is imaging. It's basically sound waves that can detect a deep vein thrombosis, a blood clot, and it detects blockages. So that is the gold standard. That's the blue ribbon standard of care and duty that these medical professionals should be doing. So if you're going into an ER or wherever you're going, and they suspect it, the first thing you're going to ask them is, okay, when am I getting my duplex ultrasonography? Because that's going to see whether or not I have a blockage. Now, if the hospital, so here's the other thing. They also, if they suspect a DVT, they also should put you on blood thinners. All right. So they should put you on a blood thinner. If they think it's something that could go at any time, they should give you a clot buster. And a clot buster is they're called thrombolytics. Other things that they could do in the hospital are also do a filter, and they put it in the vena cava, and it really protects you from getting a pulmonary embolism, because basically if a clot is migrating if it's traveling up to your lungs, the filter will intercept it. And of course, they can also tell you to put on support stockings, like right then and there. So basically, this is the standard of care. Now, if they suspect a pulmonary embolism, then they should be giving you a CAT scan, and that will be able to detect whether or not there's a pulmonary embolism. So now that and again, in this podcast, what I'm here to do is to educate you about if you if you or a friend or a loved one has sustained some type of injury, the purpose of this podcast is for me to educate you about whether or not you need to contact an attorney, because there might be a claim. So you need to know enough so that you can say, hey, I think what Steve is telling me here is enough for me, to recognize that there probably was negligence. And even if you're not sure if there was negligence, you want to talk to an attorney, because attorneys do this, especially medical malpractice attorneys. Now, all right, so what the standard of care is. So again, if you present with a blood clot or with symptoms of a blood clot, they need to do a physical exam. They need to ask you a lot of questions. They need to do the imaging, the duplex ultrasonography. If they suspect a pulmonary embolism, they need to do the CAT scan. They need to get you on blood thinners, potentially a clot buster, and they also need to potentially put you in stockings, compression stockings. All right, I'm going to read to you, I'm going to go over with you a very, very sad case. So there is a gentleman named Stephen Leupold, and Mr. Leupold presented to a hospital emergency room complaining of lower back pain, leg numbness, and a foot that had turned purple and become cool to the touch. Ladies and gentlemen, does that sound familiar? Okay. When we talked about the symptoms, we talked about the leg swelling. We talked about chest or lower back pain. We talked about discoloration. Okay. This gentleman who came into this particular emergency room came in with those symptoms. So right ahead, right from the start, that's the first, I would think that's the first thing that the emergency room should have done, or that the attending physician, whatever, should have went ahead right away and started looking at the possibility of a deep vein thrombosis. So physician assistant Charles Lucroft diagnosed sciatica and back pain and sent him home. Hello? All right, really? All right, so I guess I understand that the physician assistant who saw him, and by the way, when you go to the hospital, you want to ask for a doctor, not a physician assistant. All right. Nothing against physician assistants, but you really, really want, you want the best, and you want a doctor, an MD. So anyway, so he probably heard, oh, okay, back pain. So maybe it's just sciatica. It's, maybe a bulging disc or whatever. However, you cannot ignore the discoloration of his skin, of his foot, or the fact that it was swelling. All right. So Leupold sends him home with prescriptions and pain medications. And then a nurse came in, I guess, to the emergency room or wherever Mr. Leupold was. And the nurse gave him instructions and educational material for sciatica, which again is back pain. So 6 days, and of course, we all listen to our medical professionals. We listen to our doctors. So we're going to do what they tell us to do. So 6 days later, Leupold comes back. This time he's got severe left ankle pain. And he had not had any recent trauma, meaning that between the time he was there 6 days ago and when he came back, he had not had any new incidents to that, part of the body. So the nurse practitioner who sees him then, Mr. Carlos Flores, notes that Leupold had focal weakness in his left lower extremity, edema, and elevated blood pressure. All right, so now the nurse practitioner comes in and finds that the left lower extremity, which is, your ankle or your foot or your lower around your calf, it's deteriorated. It's gotten worse. So now it's left lower extremity, weakness, edema, which is swelling, elevated blood pressure. Something's not right. Nothing about his back. He's not coming back. He's not coming back and saying my back hurts. Yeah, I came in with discoloration, and I came in with numbness in my leg, and my foot. So what's going on? So the nurse practitioner, this is second time is that Mr. Leupold's at the hospital. Nurse practitioner diagnoses radiculopathy, which is basically pain in your back going into your leg as a result of a nerve problem. I've never heard of radiculopathy causing discoloration of the foot. I've never heard of it causing, the telltale sign is that, as far as I'm concerned, is the discoloration. And he has high blood pressure, so he's diagnosed with hypertension, peripheral edema, which is saying, well, he's got some swelling, and chronic low pain, and sends him home for the second time. So a couple of days after that, Mr. Leupold undergoes testing at a different facility. Obviously, he wasn't getting any better. So he goes back to a different medical facility. They do testing, they do imaging, and they diagnose him with deep vein thrombosis and arterial thrombosis, which is a blood clot that is causing a blockage in his lower leg. So he's diagnosed as suffering from a 2-week history of left leg ischemia. And ischemia is when basically there's no blood going to the affected area. And as a result, they've got to do an above-the-knee amputation. An above-the-knee amputation is what it sounds like. It's when they take off the leg, and above the knee is the worst, because at least below the knee, you've got your knee and you've got some control, and you can better control your prosthetic. When it's above the knee, it's a nightmare. It's a shipwreck. This guy, had he not gotten there, it probably would have migrated, and he probably would have had a pulmonary embolism and died. But he had an above the knee amputation, and that's going to obviously affect him the rest of his life. So obviously the medical facility with the nurse practitioner and the physician assistant. It's not even as if they had to make a primary diagnosis. They had to do what's called a differential diagnosis. And a differential diagnosis is where they say, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. They never, ever figured in a DVT or a blood clot into their differential diagnosis. As a result, Mr. Leupold now will be disabled and maimed and have to live with that for the rest of his life. So he filed a lawsuit against the nurse practitioner, the physician assistant, and the medical facility, and alleging that they failed to timely diagnose the blood clot. And the attorney for Mr. Leupold asserted that the defendant should have assessed the pulses in his lower extremity. So that's another thing, that when they're doing their physical exam, they need to put their fingers down to the pulses, the pulses in your ankle, in your calf, to make sure that they're hearing a pulse or they're feeling a pulse. If there's no pulse, obviously oxygen and blood are either having a hard time getting there or have stopped getting there, and that they should have. Go ahead.
I'm just curious because this, from what I'm hearing so far, sounds like a clear-cut case. Was there any kind of defense that they had, or did they just roll over and say, "Yes, we are sorry, we are responsible"?
Well, they said we weren't responsible because this was a verdict. So basically, and that's something else. So in a case where you've got a just totally very, very clear case of negligence, you send a letter to the attorneys. Well, first you send a letter to the facility and you tell the facility, hey, I'm attorney so-and-so, and I'm making a claim on behalf of Mr. Leupold for the wrongful amputation. The amputation never should have happened. And then from my experience, the insurance companies for the hospitals, for doctors, nurse practitioners, any type of medical professional, they fight these tooth and nail. I mean, they fight it like they fight it almost to the death. And so in this situation, because it went to jury, it meant that there were attempts to settle the case, because whenever you file any type of medical malpractice claim or any type of claim in court, the courts are totally overwhelmed with cases, so they try to get them resolved. It's called alternative dispute resolution. So they most likely went to a mediation where a retired judge or an attorney tried to get the two sides together to agree to settle it. And then if they can't resolve it at the mediation, then they go to a pretrial conference before the trial where the judge tries to get it resolved. But apparently, if there was, these were for naught. So they weren't able to resolve it. And they had to go.
There was a verdict.
Jury. There was a verdict.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
The jury awarded $20 million for pain and suffering. This was the case of Leupold versus Flores et al. And et al. Means that Flores wasn't the only defendant. And it happened in where you can watch, you can get your Good Lobsters, Boston. It happened in Massachusetts, Middlesex City, or Middlesex County, so around Boston. So the thing here is that the fact that they never felt for the pulses, never recognized the signs of the decreased circulation, didn't say, hey, just to be safe, let's get a duplex ultrasonography. And then they didn't bring in a vascular doctor. So when you're in the emergency room and they suspect that there's some kind of a blockage, they need to bring in a vascular specialist. And there's always a vascular specialist on call. Usually there's somebody in the hospital that has some expertise. And, but here, the lesson here is they didn't even recognize it. And so don't think that when you go into a hospital, whether it's for a blood clot or for chest pain or for whatever, don't just feel that, oh my God, I'm going to be, I know this could be a medical emergency, but I'm going to be okay because I'm in a hospital. It doesn't always turn out that way. So you have got to be educated yourself. So, yeah. So basically, it was a really sad ending for Mr. Leupold. I mean, $20 million is a lot of money for pain and suffering, but it ain't going to bring his leg back.
I'm so curious to what when they were in mediation and they tried to settle, what I would have to think it was a very insulting first offer to try to settle.
So I think that the attorneys for the insurance company, they recognized that there was negligence on the part of all the defendants. Then it just comes down to money. And I mean, how do you put a price tag on your leg, on a limb? I mean, how old was Mr. Leupold? I think Mr. Leupold.
In this case, a leg was worth $20 million.
Well, it's whatever the jury thinks, and I guess if you're sitting on a jury, you're like, I don't want to lose my leg. And it's not like it can be, it's like he says he has back pain, I dispute, or I don't think I'm kind of, just not buying that he's got these injuries. When you come in, with no leg or no limb, you don't have to sell it to the jury. The jury knows, So
do you happen to know if when the second time he came in, was it the same physician assistant or was it different?
No, that was the nurse practitioner. Then they gave him a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
No, there were two different people.
Wow.
They were two different people. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's what makes it even, just more ridiculous, and reprehensible, is that this guy's coming back and, maybe we should get a doctor because he's continuing to have these problems. But they were dead set it was sciatica, so he might have had sciatica, maybe, but he had back pain, and back pain is clearly a symptom and a sign of, of a deep vein thrombosis, of a blood clot. Look, hopefully this will never, ever happen to anyone, and not happen to you or your loved one. However, if you think that there might have been malpractice because of failure to diagnose a blood clot or any type of negligence that you think caused a blood clot to cause an amputation, God forbid, death of a loved one or a family member, or some other really horrible thing, call me. You can, or just send me an email. So you can call me at any time at 410-625-4878. Ask for Steve Heisler, because we have another Steve attorney here, or send me an email at sheisler@injurylawyermd.com. And by the way, Russ, I think for the next time, we're probably going to, I know I said we've got the injury, Steve at the injurylawyerpodcast.com, but I'm still going through, I don't know, it's like going through the channels. So we'll have it soon. But for right now, send it to sheisler@injurylawyermd.com. I want to thank everybody for watching. Russ, I want to thank you for your very, very productive, for what you talked about today and what you contributed. Very, very,
always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. We're going to have a new episode for you again next week. And listen, again, it's summer. I hope everyone is enjoying it. And if you are a baseball fan, let's go Orioles. And Russ won't say it, but
you mean
Russ,
Dodgers? Didn't you mean Dodgers?
Oh, the Dodgers. I just saw the Dodgers totally pee their pants against the Yankees. They got walked off last night against the Reds. Yeah, we got the Reds are coming. Yeah, the Reds all of a sudden are. The Orioles got walked up by the Brewers. So whatever. There's 162 games. So you got to have a short memory in the game of baseball. So. All right. Well, listen, Russ, it's good seeing you, buddy. I will see you soon.
As always.
Everybody else, just like I said, have a great summer and give my best to everyone. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Injury Lawyer Podcast. Connect with us at theinjurylawyerpodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to follow, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. To find out more or get help anytime, visit theinjurylawyermd.com or call 855-396-2637. That's 855-396-2637.